Hello noble ones, welcome back to my channel. This is the Metatron speaking, and today we are looking at a recent watch obsession of mine, the Y-Files. Freaking love the Y-Files, I'm having a great time. I disagree with the majority of the information presented, but as far as I understand, so does the host. Anyways, we watched a video about Atlantis, trying to justify it with archaeological and specifically architectural elements of ancient civilization that they had in common. If you want to watch that video, you can find a link in the description. But for today, it's Atlantis again, but this time in connection with the Knight Templars. Oh, this is going to be a great one. Strap in.
This episode of the Y-Files is brought to you by PDS Debt.
Thank you, PDS.
The accepted narrative describes the Knights Templar as humble warrior monks protecting Christians on the road to Jerusalem. The Knights were later betrayed and ultimately destroyed.
Right.
But there is another story within that story. It's a legend filled with murder.
Two things. First comment is positive. Love the guy, love the fish. Okay? Love his voice, everything, the intro, fantastic. This AI image, though, is... this is vomit-inducing. Mr. Wi-Fi, man, I really love your work. Please contact me. I will do... You tell me, Metatron, I need 50 images of medieval knights and 30 images of archers specifically. I'll find all of it, send it to you. Don't even need to mention me. I don't want any remuneration in process. But this, man, come on. Please. I just hate it.
Mystery and buried treasure. Okay. And it involves a secret powerful enough to rewrite history and change the world.
That is a massive secret. I mean, guys, I'm covering it. You don't know what I'm talking about. The massive, I'm a little tongue-in-cheek here, but the massive secret is that the Templars were the Mandalorians all along.
Yes, the Templars were in Jerusalem protecting Christians, but that was their cover story. The real reason they were there was they were looking for something, ancient technology. So as soon as the Knights Templar arrived in the Holy Land, they started digging. And then...
Which they did start digging, I mean, to be fair.
Yeah, I know, Seymour, but it's only for a couple of days.
Human, I'm not gonna beat around the bush. I need some cash.
Well, hello to you, too.
No time for chit-chat. Gertie wants to go to St. Bart's for Valentine's Day.
St. Bart's?
It's a Caribbean island.
I know what it is. Isn't it like $1,700 a night?
Whatever my baby wants, my baby gets. Anyway, the beavers and I started business, and I need a little money to get going. That's where you come in, human.
No way. How many times do I have to
Hear me out. I'm having a hard enough time making my monthly credit card payments as it is. Then there's gas, pump supplies, camel chow. You've seen how much Gertie eats.
I mean, the fish has a point, okay? The fish has a point.
It's fine, baby. I don't mind a little junk in the hump. Anyway, I can't keep up. I just need a teeny tiny investment. Say, 40 G's.
40,000?
Okay, 45.
Absolutely not.
Oh, come on. You'll love this new business. It's called Beaver Box. We ship wood and wood products. For Valentine's Day, the beavers are knowing custom wood-shaped hot pins. You wear it for your significant other, family, friends, whoever. Right now, I got a hard-on for you.
Did you say you have a hard-on?
Yeah.
Yeah, you
What?
Probably want to change the...
Look, people are going to be buying these wood hot pins like crazy. Everyone you love can have a hard-on.
Please stop saying it.
Saying what?
Look, why don't you just have PDS take care of your debt?
Oh, I think you just shimmied your way into today's sponsor.
I sure did. PDS has options for anyone struggling with a lot of monthly debt payments. Credit cards, personal loans, collections, medical bills.
Well, like 95% of the global population right now.
Everyone with over $10,000 or more in eligible debt qualifies.
Well, if I had good credit, I wouldn't be bugging you for a loan.
Well, there's no minimum credit score required. Good and fair credit is accepted. They roll your debt into one loan with monthly payment. You can save thousands in interest and fees and pay off your debt in a fraction of the time.
I am liking the sound of this.
PDS is also giving our qualified viewers a free debt analysis just for completing the 30-second online assessment at www.pdsdebt.com/files.
pdsdebt.com/files.
You got it.
Well, this sounds perfect. I'll sign up after the beavers are done filling the beaver boxes with wood.
Yeah, I'm uncomfortable with the wait, where are you getting the wood?
Oh, there was a bunch of it in the garage. The beavers say it's delicious.
That's the new hardwood flooring for the kitchen.
Well, I'm sorry. Beaver's gonna beaver. From now on, you just let me know anytime you get wood.
My wife's gonna kill me.
Oh, don't worry about it. Once she sees these pins, she'll forget you. You know what? I'll have the boys carve an extra large pin for you to wear. That way, when she gets home, you'll have a huge hard-on for her.
The Knights Templar were formed in 1118. At least that's when they were officially formed.
Yeah.
The real story began many years earlier in Constantinople, now Istanbul.
Istanbul was Constantinople. Now it's Istanbul and Constantinople. Been a long time, girl.
And before it was Byzantium.
On Constantinople, when a Constantinople get the works, that's nobody's business,
See,
but...
that's a much better Templar. Hecklefish is doing it right. Points for Hecklefish. Look, that's a Templar. I mean, not the big red cross in the middle. This should be small on the left over the heart. But the male Horberg is pretty nice. The male Horberg is okay. Although then again, if it's late 12th century, beginning of the 13th, we should cover the hands as well. But the male coif is good because it's covering and going all the way up to the chin. That's fine. That's fine.
the Turks. What? Tell me that song didn't pop into your head the second you said it.
No, it did, but do you mind if I...
Istanbul.
The Brothers of the East was a secret order formed in Greece that eventually set up their headquarters in Istanbul. They practiced alchemy, they studied sacred geometry, they performed rites and rituals incorporating astrology, astronomy, music, and mathematics. So when Hugh de Payens, a French nobleman, met the Brothers of the East, he was excited. De Payens was technically Catholic, as most of Europe was, but he had family members who were of the Sufi Islamic faith, which is the more mystical side of Islam.
Instead of the
De Payens had been told of this secret group that possessed and was protecting ancient knowledge. He wanted to meet this group and see for himself. At this time in history, Europe was in chaos. Various kingdoms were rising and falling and warring with each other. In the East, Muslims and Christians were clashing. The world was tearing itself apart, yet the Brothers of the East possessed a peaceful wisdom. They weren't concerned with modern politics. The brothers had a purpose that was much more important. Once mutual trust was established, the Brothers of the East told the European visitors their story. Well, not their story, the story. It was the story of an ancient civilization that thrived thousands of years ago. The people were highly spiritual and highly advanced. It was a civilization that was free of poverty. Wealth was meaningless. They devised methods of growing crops so
they had modern boats like the ones in Venice. But anyways, this is beautiful. The crops, I love it. You know, the story of Atlantis is compelling now, as it was compelling in the ancient period. And is there any possibility that perhaps it is grounded not just in mythology, but perhaps there is a connection to something that did happen? Maybe there was a civilization, although now we imagine it with either aliens or robots, and maybe take that one apart. But maybe there was a civilization and they died because of a massive natural disaster, but the remnants of this turned into legend and maybe kind of as a memory long forgotten at a species level, but still there are little pieces here and there. It is a fascinating possibility, and I'm not completely removing it, just like I don't remove the possibility, for instance, that a lot of the biblical stories, and in fact stories that we found in Akkadian tradition, Sumerian texts, and other religions, ancient Egyptian, when they talk about stuff like fire came from the sky, it doesn't necessarily mean, like Sodom and Gomorrah, it doesn't automatically mean that, oh yeah, they probably just made it up. No, maybe it was a natural disaster, and then they just told us about it. Likewise with the flood. So you should always have a little bit of an open mind, I think. You shouldn't just say, oh, this is just all nonsense. But then again, of course, it gets embellished, doesn't it? And that's the part that it requires, like, the historian and the studies and the actual information, right? Because we need the data.
Every citizen was fed. They could control the weather. Droughts and famine were impossible. To Hugh de Payens, this civilization had abilities that sounded like miracles or like sorcery. They could communicate over long distances instantly somehow. They had a way of levitating objects no matter how large or how heavy. They had medicine that could cure any illness, allowing people to live very long lives. War didn't exist. There was such an abundance of resources that anyone can have whatever they wanted. And what these people wanted most was to pursue their own spirituality. And then they were gone. How, de Payens asked, could a civilization this powerful, who seemed to be able to control nature itself, be suddenly wiped out? The Brothers of the East said in a single day the ground shook, and volcanoes emerged and erupted. Then a giant flood swept over the earth and destroyed everything.
Ah, I know where this is going.
It was then that Hugh de Payens and his 8 knights learned of Atlantis.
Yahtzee!
You gotta subscribe, guys. I'll leave a link in the description and pinned comment as always. But as I say, it's really fun to watch. You just have to watch it with a skeptic mind, but not too much. Always leave a little bit of possibility. And again, that's the same position as the presenter.
Hugh de Payens and his fellow knights were riveted by the story. De Payens was a nobleman, a count in fact. He was the Count of Champagne.
Le Mouet Champagne. Oh, pardon my French.
De Payens was an educated man. He knew about Plato and his stories of the island of Atlantis. He thought they were just stories. The brothers said Plato was mostly correct, but Atlantis wasn't just a city or even just an island. It was a civilization that spanned the globe, and each city was connected using transportation technology that again sounded like magic. The story became almost
Any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic. So if there was some kind of like what we do today would be considered magic. Like if you could show an ancient Roman, and you don't even need to go that far back, to be honest.
Almost overwhelming. Almost. The brothers said that ancient relics of Atlantis still exist, and they still possess their power. The power to travel great distances, the power of communication, the power to heal, perhaps even the secret to immortality.
Yeah, we've been looking
If
for
ever
that
discovered, these artifacts would be the most powerful and dangerous devices on Earth. Dupain said that any kingdom, any country, any religion would kill to have access to this power.
Would you want me to make an episode dedicated to the type of seek or search for immortality of ancient Chinese dynastic emperors? Because there is something very interesting, like historically, and then it's very interesting. So very interesting. Let me know in the comments.
The brothers of the East agreed. The technology of Atlantis could not fall into the wrong hands. So Hugh Dupain's was offered an assignment. Find the ancient artifacts and bring them back to Europe for safekeeping. Hugh and the other 8 men immediately agreed and formed a secret fellowship. But where do they start looking? The brothers said they'll find artifacts under the location of what used to be King Solomon's temple, the Temple Mount in Jerusalem. The knights would have to act quickly. The Holy Land was a dangerous place. Jerusalem was taken by Christian crusaders in 1099, but who knows how long they could hold it. And there was another problem. It wasn't just the knights that knew about the artifacts. Groups of Christians, Jews, Muslims, they were searching too. So when the knights arrived in the Holy Land in 1120, they set up their headquarters where Solomon's temple once stood. They officially became known as Poor Fellow Soldiers of Christ and the Temple of Solomon.
Yep, that's the official name. Pauperes Commilitones Christi et Salomonici Templi. Read it in ecclesiastical Latin.
The Knights Templar. And the Knights played the role of courageous warrior monks, protecting Christians making the long pilgrimage to the Holy Land. But while some Knights Templar guarded Jerusalem, other knights were digging beneath it. Day and night they dug, until one day they struck gold.
And by the way, when it comes to the digging, that did happen. Of course, they were looking for stuff. If you think about it, why is Jerusalem so important? Because it's the center and the core for all 3 religions: Jewish, Christian, and Muslim, and Islam. And so everyone wants it. It's literally, and for the Christians, like anything you could find, like relics connected to Jesus, obviously they're going to search everywhere, wherever they can.
Literally. The brothers of the East were right. They promised the Knights Templar that if they dug under the Temple Mount, they would find artifacts that once belonged to the great civilization of Atlantis. The Knights found a large box made of acacia wood and gold. There was no question they had found the legendary Ark of the Covenant. And then they found 5 more. Year after year, the Knights Templar pulled treasures from beneath Jerusalem. They found the Spear of Destiny, the Holy Grail, the Emerald Tablet, and pages of ancient esoteric wisdom. They learned there were 10 arks, though they only found 6. The arks were used in conjunction with pyramids around the world to create limitless energy. This was similar to what Nikola Tesla attempted at Wardenclyffe.
Personally, when you read the Bible in Hebrew, I should make a video dedicated to the Ark of the Covenant, different from the Ark of Noah for those who are not familiar. It's an object that the Israelites brought with them. They kept them in the temple. It is described with the 2 cherubs of gold on top with the wings, just like you saw there. But they brought it with them to war. And in fact, it's the one object that you are instructed not to touch, because if you touch, you'll be struck by lightning. Interestingly enough, so only the Levites were allowed to touch it, priests. If you read the Bible in Hebrew, it really does sound like the Ark of the Covenant was a weapon. I'll leave it at that.
Power. If you want to learn how this technology worked, we have an episode that explains scientifically how the Great Pyramid of Giza could have been a power generator.
Pyramid link below.
I disagree. Yeah, I know what he's referring to. I do not believe in the pyramid power plant theories, because at the end of the day, for me to accept the possibility of the pyramids to be power plants, you would have to first prove to me why the ancient Egyptians needed power in the first place. And by power, I mean electricity. So unless you find unless you tell me it's the aliens and they use the electricity, but then they went away. Well, then to that I would ask, okay, but then why are they building in stone then if it's the aliens? Why are they limiting themselves? Are they playing in hard mode? Why don't they use metals? Why don't they use alloys that we're not even aware of? Why are they limiting themselves to using stone and wood? But regardless of that, unless you use the alien excuse, they're gone, and so that's the electricity, that's how they were used, okay? But if it's the civilization, if it's the ancient Egyptians, or if it's whatever it is, Atlantis, if they use electricity, they need power. It means that they have devices, it means that they have lighting, it means that they have like lampposts, they have whatever the heck. And until we find one of these, I do not understand a Bronze Age, subsequently an Iron Age civilization that requires electricity. If they don't have the technology to make use of that. You don't harness a certain resource unless you have a use for it. Otherwise it becomes useless to you.
Within the king's chamber of the Great Pyramid is a stone box. Mainstream Egyptology says this box is a sarcophagus to store a mummy.
Yeah.
But no mummy was ever found there. And the dimensions of the box are kind of small for a human body. But the box is the perfect size to store one of the arks. The Knights Templar discovered that the pyramids were built for one specific purpose, to store the arks. And the arks, they were built to store manna. In the Bible, manna was a food source that appeared to the Israelites in the desert. It's described as fine flakes
From the sky.
that look like frost on the ground. But according to Templar tradition, the Israelites and the Atlanteans before them extracted manna from plant and animal matter and turned it into a monoatomic white powder. This white powder provides energy.
A white powder that provides energy. New York in the 80s was wild, eh?
Sugar.
You're thinking about something else. The manna acted as an electrical superconductor and powered the arks inside the pyramids. The arks generated unlimited energy for the thriving civilization. They
Well,
learned.
you see, even with this imagery, look at this. You see the usage of it. They're using it to light bulbs everywhere, right? So where is the electric? You can see there is a usage. It makes logical sense. There is a user getting the electricity, and they're using it to power up and light up the entire Delta region at this point. Where is all of this tech that required the electricity?
The pyramids. The arks generated unlimited energy for the thriving civilization. They learned these alchemical secrets from none other than the Emerald Tablet.
Emerald tablet link below.
The Emerald Tablet gave detailed instructions on extracting mana from animal bones. The mana could then be used for energy or even for healing illness.
Hey, didn't the Emerald tablet also tell you how to become immortal by making the Philosopher's Stone?
Yup.
From eating pee?
Yes.
Eating lots of pee.
Yes.
Immortality sounds gross.
It does, but if you want to be immortal,
Ain't no such thing as a free lunch.
nope.
Even if lunch is pee.
That's enough. Some of these ancient texts even talked about creating mana from gold. When mana was extracted from gold, it could be used to make objects lighter, for levitation. Now think about it. The Ark is a box almost 4 feet long and 3 feet wide. It's made of gold. Gold is heavy. The Ark of the Covenant also contained the 10 Commandments, which were carved into stone tablets. Stone is heavy. Just the gold would have weighed almost 1,000 pounds. That doesn't include the weight of the stone or the acacia wood.
Yes, if it is solid gold, that is.
Yet it only took 4 men to carry it. By the way, the men who carried the Ark were Levites.
Yeah.
Levite. Levitation.
Yeah, I think that connection is a little weak etymologically speaking.
Covenant link below.
The Knights Templar also found very old texts that even predated the civilization of Atlantis. These documents spoke of a non-human race that enslaved humanity thousands of years ago to mine gold.
Anunnaki!
The Anunnaki come up a lot on this channel, and I promise I'll do a full episode on them. But
Cool.
here's the short version.
I'll watch it.
The Anunnaki were gods worshipped by the ancient Sumerians, but they were actually aliens from a planet beyond Neptune called Nibiru. The Anunnaki arrived on Earth about 450,000 years ago, searching for resources, specifically gold. They were trying to solve an atmospheric crisis on their planet. Now, finding gold in abundance, they settled on Earth and established mining operations. Eventually, the Anunnaki created a labor force by genetically modifying early human ancestors, accelerating the evolution of Homo sapiens.
We need this episode, Chief.
I know, we'll do it, I promise.
Yeah.
Did he ever do it?
Yeah, your promises and $60 are worth about one night's worth of mana.
Okay. So the Templars knew about the Anunnaki and how they converted gold into a powder used for healing, levitation, and generating electricity. And it wasn't just the Atlanteans and Israelites that knew about mana. Sumerian texts spoke of an alchemical science called Graal, which you can't help but notice is similar to the word Grail. The Sumerians used a substance called Shimana that was used to help the Anunnaki gods power their flying craft. In Vedic, Hindu, and Jain texts, this substance was called Vimana, which again was used to power flying crafts. Polynesian cultures believe mana is a force of nature anyone can extract. Buddhists call it mani. Though the words vary slightly in all these cultures, the definition and use are the same. Mana is a potent substance that allows humanity to tap into something very powerful in nature. And by the way, the Templar cross, you can find that carved everywhere and every time civilization existed. The cross is all over ancient Egypt. You can even see the cross carved on the ancient Sumerian depictions of the Anunnaki. Templar legend says this was actually the symbol of Atlantis. After Atlantis was destroyed in the Great Flood,
Of the Younger Dryas.
yep, the Templar legend of Atlantis and the Great Flood is exactly like every other flood myth we find in every culture around the world.
I really have to make an episode on the flood because there are commonalities. She's correct about that. I wouldn't say it's exactly the same. It is clearly the same event / myth and described. And I think making a video, because we often hear this, right? Like you said, it's found in all over. But it wouldn't be nice to sit down and actually read all of the Akkadian texts and all the ancient Egyptians and all the Sumerians and this and connect it with the Bible and ancient Greek. So there's a lot of connection, by the way, between biblical tradition and ancient Greek tradition. Like you're all familiar with the idea of the ancient Israelites, for instance, being commanded by Yahweh, if you accept that pronunciation, vocalization. You know who I'm talking about, tetragrammaton, to, for instance, slaughter animals, and then you burn the fat around the organs, and then the smoke, the fumes from that fat, they are pleasing unto God. Well, the same exact thing happens in ancient Greek myth. It's just that as Christians or Jews would believe, because it's written in the Bible, but then if we read the same thing without knowledge of the Bible for a moment, say you didn't read that, you didn't go to Sunday school, and then you read it in ancient Greek, then you immediately say, well, yeah, that's mythology. But yet you believe the exact same thing in the Bible. There is correlation. There is correlation between the two. I should make an episode. I really should.
After the flood, a few survivors restarted civilization with knowledge from Atlantis. The cross was carved in their honor. But not everything the Knights found was Atlantean. Some artifacts were from just 1,000 years before, during the time of Jesus. There were ancient texts that confirmed a lot of what was said in the Bible, but some texts contradicted the Bible. There was no way the Knights could let the church find out what they discovered. The Catholic Church was growing more powerful every year. If the truth came out, it could shake the very foundation of the faith, and the Knights Templar would be destroyed. Besides, much of the Knights' funding came from the church. But no historical document compared to the shock of what they discovered next, an ossuary, which is a collection of bones. This ossuary held the bones of a very famous religious family, all buried together. The Knights found the bones of Mary Magdalene, John the Baptist, and Jesus himself. But they also found the bones of the children Mary had with both of them.
And of course, bones of Jesus, you'll never find them, at least according to what we believe, but to each his own.
To call what the Knights Templar discovered blasphemous would be a huge understatement. They discovered documents and artifacts that would literally destroy the church. They needed to keep these treasures safe from being destroyed. They needed to keep them from falling into the wrong hands, specifically the Pope's hands. The Templars knew that the existence of the bones of John, Jesus, and Mary Magdalene and their children would mean the end of the Catholic Church. But to rub salt in an already gaping wound, the Templars found something potentially even more threatening to the Church: an alternate belief system. The Templars were Christian, but not in the strictest sense, as most of Europe was, and more importantly, as their king and employers were. Spreading information contrary to the teachings of the Catholic Church was not only heresy, it was a death sentence. Remember, this was all happening at the time of the Crusades. Religions were at war.
And I mean, to solidify the point that he's making with a little history, the Catholic Church, we're all familiar with the Crusades in the Holy Land, as Catholicism is fighting Islam and all that kind of stuff. But one of the Crusades was, in fact, in France against another type of or sect, we could say, of Christianity. So it's not like the Pope wasn't going to send a crusade against other Christians. If he did. It did happen historically. So, I mean, there is that.
The Templars couldn't speak about their findings, but couldn't ignore them either. So instead, they hid them, they protected them, and studied them. Some ancient wisdom included blasphemous ideas like the divine feminine, reincarnation, heaven as a state of mind, and an innate connection to the Creator. The Knights maintained their appearance as devout Catholics. They had to. Their biggest patron was the Catholic Church. You don't bite the hand that feeds you, especially the most powerful hand on earth. But in secret, the Knights Templar were Christian Gnostics.
Interesting theory would have to be proven. I mean, the one of...
Gnosticism comes from the Greek word gnosis, meaning divine knowledge. Other cultures call this enlightenment. The basic premise is that spirituality can be found within, without needing an outside institution. So no reason to have priests, monks, saviors, or churches at all. You didn't need them to find God. He's already within you. One of the earliest Templar documents mentions...
Technically, if just to be a little technical here, but if you don't think you need a savior, automatically you're not a Christian anymore. So you're not a Christian Gnostic if part of that belief is, well, we don't need Jesus. He doesn't exist. Don't believe in the resurrection. Not a Christian. Something else at that point. You can be a Gnostic, a Christian Gnostic, in the sense that you believe in personal revelation coming with it, whatever. But the split second you remove Christ from it, then you're not a Christian anymore. On a matter of definition, on a definitional matter.
God-given rights. Now, Americans use this phrase, or something close to it, in the Declaration of Independence. But that was in the 18th century. The idea of God-given rights during the time of the Templars meant excommunication or worse. Only the Roman Church could give someone rights. Any alternative was bad for business.
Only the Roman Church could give someone rights. No, there was... So, state and church as a divided thing wouldn't make sense from a medieval perspective. They were absolutely interconnected, but rights, not exactly the same as the modern sense, but legal rights, let's use that word for a moment, absolutely were not given exclusively by the Roman Church. It's a little bit of a misleading statement. State authorities, like for instance, there's the whole situation between the Holy Roman Empire with the emperor and his own agents, and then the Catholic Church with their own agents, such as bishops, and in fact the whole discussion on who gets to call bishops in specific areas. It is intertwined, but sometimes they clash, secular authority and aristocratic authority so the blue blood with the men of the robe.
And instead of worshiping Jesus, many Knights Templar idolized John the Baptist, who they believe initiated Jesus into Gnosticism in the Great Pyramid. To the Templars, Jesus represented a Christos, a universal consciousness anyone could access, similar to the Buddha. They learned that being born again didn't refer to baptism. It referred to reincarnation, which someone would literally be born again. With the bones of Jesus, sacred documents, and artifacts from an ancient civilization, the Templars had plenty of evidence to back up their beliefs.
Evidence being loosely used here, because then again, how can they confirm, apart from hearsay, if anyone finds a box and he says, oh yeah, it's the bones of Jesus, but you could say bones of anything. Without genetic testing, it's hearsay. So it's not evidence, obviously.
They wanted to share this knowledge, but it wasn't the right time. The church was too powerful. They would have to wait. They would wait until this knowledge could be shared with the entire world and not seized by one pope or one king. So after years of digging, these early knights returned to Europe with the treasures and knowledge and hid it. And then they built an empire. For 200 years, the Knights Templar grew and thrived. Their numbers increased from a handful of soldiers to tens of thousands of men and women. The Catholic Church and Christian lords throughout Europe gave the Knights Templar money, land, and power to help their cause. The Templars created
They should use some of that money to buy better helmets.
cathedrals, power structures, and systems of democracy. They created the first banking system,
True.
a system we still use today.
Yeah,
During the Dark Ages, the journey from Europe to Jerusalem was dangerous.
with notes of Reddit.
Road agents were robbing the pilgrims of everything they had. So the Knights Templars set up locations along the way called commanderies. At any one of these locations, you could deposit your gold in exchange for a note. You then take this note to another commandery and exchange it for gold.
That is all correct. Excellent.
And for every transaction, the Knights Templar charged a small fee. It was an ingenious system used by thousands of people for hundreds of years. Over time, those little fees added up. Now, individually, the knights were poor. When joining, you gave all your wealth to the order. The order then took care of you and all its members. The treasures and knowledge passed from generation to generation, with each Grand Master responsible for their safekeeping. And for those few hundred years, the Knights Templar were extremely successful at distracting the church from their true purpose. A little too successful. Eventually, the Knights Templar had their own armies, their own fleets of ships. They had their own merchants, masons, and farmers. They were independent and self-sustaining. The Knights Templar became the first multinational corporation. They had no need for a king or country. In fact, the opposite happened. The Knights Templar were so wealthy that King Philip of France was borrowing money from them. In the fall of 1307, King Philip IV needed financing for another war. He wasn't going to borrow any more money from the Knights. Instead, he would take it from them.
Yeah, it was a matter of greed. It really was a matter of greed, the end of the Templars. And of course, if you want to add all the layers of this, it's different. But the one that we can confirm is this, is the greed of the king and the coveting of their fortune and economic power.
The Templars had gone from humble defenders of Christianity to a serious threat to the entire power structure of Europe, the king and the church. And like many powerful rulers, King Philip didn't tolerate threats. So Philip and Pope Clement V devised a plan.
Can you imagine the Pope? being
Pope
like,
Clement,
yeah,
by the way, was born Raymond Bertrand and was a childhood friend of the king. When the previous pope died in 1304, King Philip made sure his friend was elected to what was one of the most powerful seats of power on earth. In short, the Pope owed him one. On Friday the 13th of October 1307, 100 Templars, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay, were arrested. For 7 years, they were threatened and tortured to try to gain access to their knowledge and wealth. After making false confessions, they were found guilty of heresy and sentenced to death.
burnt alive.
But now, there's a plot twist. For centuries, history claimed the Church had condemned the Knights Templar as heretics and eventually had them executed. But in 2001, a document was found in the Vatican Secret Archives. It's called the Chinon Parchment.
Let me comment on that. The Vatican Secret Archives. I've been there. I was invited. I went inside the... Not directly invited by name, but I was invited with a group, study group, and we entered. And I visited all the sections that they allowed us to see. Do keep in mind, however, that secret means private. Not secret in the sense that, in the way you would try, because it makes it sound like, oh my gosh, this was from the Vatican Secret Archives. Yeah, but secret means private in the way they use it. So you need an invitation in order to go. And you usually need to be a scholar, that kind of stuff. Yeah.
The Chinon Parchment documented the inquiry led by 3 cardinals appointed by Pope Clement V. It details the investigation and the charges against the Templar leaders, including the Grand Master Jacques de Molay. The Chinon Parchment reveals that the Pope absolved the Templar leaders of heresy. They were allowed to reconcile with the Church. The Pope would allow the Order of the Knights Templar to continue their work. King Philip didn't like this result. He applied pressure to the Pope. Remember, the Pope owed him one. So in 1312, Pope Clement officially disbanded the Knights Templar. The leaders of the order, including Jacques de Molay, were later burned at the stake on charges of heresy, even though they were forgiven of these crimes. But Grandmaster Jacques de Molay
It's a famous, let's see how he's going to recount it, but that's the famous one, the curse.
would enact a small token of revenge for this betrayal of justice. As he slowly burned to death, Molay issued a curse to the Pope and the King of France. He promised them that they would be dead within a year. This was March of 1314.
Yeah.
A few weeks later, Pope Clement was dead. According to one account, while lying in state, he was struck by lightning. The fire was so intense that his body was unrecognizable. And if you read up on this pope, you'll agree that this was divine justice. In November, King Philip had a stroke and died. He was 46 years old.
When he said that the slowly burnt to death as a description of being burnt at the stake, I would like to underline that in a lot of cases, the individual dies because of smoke annihilation before the body is actually burnt to a crisp, just from a clinical perspective. Not always, but oftentimes.
The Templar curse was fulfilled. France had now lost its king and its pope, and Europe had lost their beloved knights, or so it seemed. When the arrest order was given on October 13th, the Knights Templar knew it was coming. They had spies everywhere they had known for weeks, and they used those weeks to plan. On October 12th, the night before the arrest order was given, the Templars' entire fleet of ships disappeared into the darkness. And aboard those ships were all the ancient Atlantean artifacts, the holy treasures, and forbidden documents. Jacques de Molay and about 100 knights stayed behind. They hoped they could reason with the king and the pope. They failed in that mission, but succeeded in another. Disbanded but not destroyed, in hiding but not in prison, the Templars formed into smaller groups. They assimilated into other orders. Some assumed new identities and disappeared altogether. The Knights Templar in name ended in 1312, but their mission continued. In fact, it continues today. The evidence is everywhere. Evidence of the Knights Templar can be found all over the world. After they disbanded, they were determined to keep their knowledge and traditions alive, so they created alias groups to avoid detection. In Scotland, they became Freemasons. Portugal, they were known as the Knights of Christ. In Germany, they created Rosicrucianism. There's also evidence of them in the early Americas. Nova Scotia has the legendary Oak Island, with buried Templar treasure and deadly curses. An indigenous tribe in Panama, known as the White Indians of Darien, have pale skin and Caucasian features. Some believe they're descendants of the first Templars in the Americas.
I actually never heard of this one. I heard of the other ones. I never heard of this one, so I would have to double check. Did they do any genetic testing to confirm that?
When asked about the Knights Templar, the natives called them our brothers. In early Europe, Templars were the first Vikings. The first pirates were Knights Templar. The famous skull and crossbones symbol, the Jolly Roger, that flag was first flown by the Templar Navy to frighten their enemies before battle.
I'll have to double check on this one, actually. Never heard of that. I looked into the flag for a video of mine on piracy. I don't remember reading this, though. I wonder where the source is.
One of the most famous Templar symbols is the Red Cross with a white background.
Correct.
Another is the depiction of several knights on a horse, like this statue in London. Both of these are found in cathedrals and chapels all across Europe. If you read or saw the Da Vinci Code, you may remember Roslin Chapel in Scotland. Pagan and Templar symbols are on every inch of it. Some, like this carving of a knight on horseback, are obvious.
Man, look at that couched lance.
Is the gravestone for William Sinclair. It's in the lower part of Roslin Chapel. It specifically says Knight Templar. William Sinclair had no love for the church and provided help to any Knights Templar who asked for it. But it's not just crosses and horses that the Knights engraved on their architecture. There are more subtle clues relating to some of their Gnostic and sometimes pagan beliefs. Sculptures of angels in strange positions are common in Roslin Chapel and are an important rite in Freemasonry. But Freemasonry wasn't supposed to have started until 1717. Roslin Chapel was built in 1446.
Yeah, I mean, there could be some inspiration that doesn't necessarily connect the two. It could just mean, to play devil's advocate, that Freemasons took inspiration from older concepts rather than just making them up, which is really what it is.
Over 100 of these little green men are scattered around Rosslyn Chapel. They're pagan symbols and thought to originate from ancient Celtics. Paganism simply refers to anything that isn't Christian, Muslim, or Jewish.
Yeah.
Why would there be hundreds of non-Christian symbols in a Catholic church? Templar legend says they were placed there as a message. Some of the more interesting carvings are of plants that Europeans never should have known about. This is a picture of corn over one of the windows in Rosslyn Chapel, and here's one of trillium. But corn and trillium are native to North America.
Yeah, we have to be careful with those, because I've reviewed a lot of claims when it comes to American plants, whether it be, corn, but there are other, like, even flowers and stuff like that. Most of them have been debunked. So do keep that with is it pinch of salt, grain of salt?
Rosslyn Chapel was built almost 50 years before Columbus sailed to the New World. How would Templars know what these plants look like?
They didn't.
Well, isn't it obvious? They were there first. Templar legend says Sir Henry Sinclair, grandfather of the builder of Rosslyn Chapel, was not only a Templar, but was among the first Europeans to visit the New World. Not only that, but Christopher Columbus himself was associated with the Knights. He was a distant relative.
I'm going to stop it at Christopher Columbus because it's exactly 30 minutes in. So if you are invested, I usually don't react to the entire thing when it's very long, sometimes even when it's short. So it's very easy. Click the link in the description, pin comment, and resume the video at minute 30. Give him a like, give him a comment, and all the rest, so he gets the engagement. Very cool episode, though. I really enjoyed it. I'm not convinced, as always, for the majority of the stuff that he said, but some of the things that have to do with at the beginning with Atlantis and whatnot, it was interesting. It's fascinating, and the flood, and in general, Templar history is deep. It's deep, but there is a lot we don't know. There is a lot we don't know because it was a very secretive order. That I grant him, absolutely. I hope you enjoyed it. As always, I love spending my evenings. Sometimes, usually do it. I'm not doing it now, but usually do it with a little food, a little, picking. Maybe you've got some crisps, maybe you've got some chips, whatever it is, a little ketchup. It's nice. Anyways, ketchup is originally a Chinese word, by the way. Thank you for watching. See you tomorrow. Ciao, ciao.